everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Moore. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, we are bringing back one of our favorite features, rewatching games from one of Ohio State's upcoming opponents. We did this a bunch during the college football playoff run last year. It was a very popular feature with our listeners and our viewers. It was also a very popular feature with me because I felt like I was way more prepared going into those games, having watched and like really closely watched, not just sort of like passively like flipping back and forth between channels, watched a few of these games. Last year, we made a point to really watch the most impact, talent-equated kind of games. Washington's schedule has not made that easy this year so far. So we're just going to watch the games they've played. The first one is against Colorado State. And Tony, I believe the Latin term for Colorado State's this team this year is booty cheeks.
Booty cheeks. Wow. That is Latin.
Yes, that is Latin. Yes. I learned it at Oxford or Cambridge. I forget.
Wow. You've been a lot of places, Tom, learned a lot of things. And who am I to say, I don't think that sounds right. But yes, the Washington Huskies won this game to open the season 38-21. The score was 21-21 late in the third to give you an idea of how things went. And so let's just, okay, here, Tom. The first thing I want to touch on, and I know we're going to talk about quarterback DeMond Williams in a bit. I want to talk about running back Jonah Coleman, who is, unlike most running backs you'll see, he's 5'8", 5'9"-ish, probably 5'8", 225, rushed for 177 yards in this one. I was trying to think, like, he's unlike anybody you'll ever see. Then I was like, well, he's kind of like a much better Mayan Williams, because Mayan Williams is built low to the ground like that. And I think he was like 5'9", 227, and Jonah Coleman is really, really good. And he's tough to bring down. He's all thighs. And so, it might be a good chicken order, but trying to tackle the running back, not great. And he's impressive. He's quick. He's showed more speed than I thought he'd have, but I don't know if that's a product of a slow Colorado State defense or what. Certainly he's right now, I'd say he's the best running back in the Big Ten, most productive in the two games that he's gotten to play. And so just right away he stands out, even if the stature, belies that.
Yeah, he looks like an old school Wisconsin running back, because those guys were more like 6 foot 240. He's like 5'8", 220 something. But he, the build is the same, where he looks like a stocky running back, where it's like, oh, that guy's going to run through some tackles. And he absolutely does. They had a stat on the broadcast that 78.6% of his rushing yards last year were after contact. That was the best in FBS among people with more than 1,000 yards. So, he will run through contact for you. But he also he can do some other stuff. He's not just the big guy that you just sort of, rock, paper, scissors, and you're just going to call rock, and you're just going to just rock. He can move. He can move his feet. He's effective in the passing game. Quick feet. He had some nice change of direction, had a nice jump cut at one point. They use him as a kick returner, which kind of tells you that, yeah, they do feel like he has some speed and could, can be a big play guy. He also, man, he is you'd better, are you sure he's on the ground? Are you really sure he's on the ground? You'd better make real sure he's on the ground and then double check. This is like, killing Jason or killing Michael Myers or something. Like, are you sure? Are you really sure? Because there was one right at the end of the game that he ended up getting ruled that he was down, but he was churning his legs. He's powering through tackles. They thought they had him on the ground. And then he was like, well, maybe you don't. And then he just kind of kept going and ended up scoring a touchdown. And they ended up overturning it. And he scored like one play later, so it didn't end up mattering. But he is a really, really difficult running back to get on the ground. And he's dynamic enough that they can do a bunch of different stuff with him, where it's not just, this is the one thing you can do. Ohio State's had guys over the past where it's, Mayan Williams, like you said, is a great example. Master Teague was kind of the same, where it's like, had some good speed, kind of a tough guy to bring to the ground, but couldn't necessarily do everything. He was more of a situational kind of role player kind of running back. Jonah Coleman is really, really dynamic. I'm going to pull up his stats real quick, because he He had 24 carries for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns, averaged 7.4 yards per carry. Now, 24 carries, that's a lot. And we've talked about that, some of the Ohio State rewatch shows. That's one of those numbers that's going to catch up with you, especially if you're doing that against Colorado State, let alone in some of your bigger games. So that'll probably catch up with you at some point, but Ohio State has them early enough in the schedule that I'm not expecting it to catch up with him by the time the Buckeyes show up.
Yeah, and he that one where he was almost he was down, like it was a butt cheek scraped the ground, and I'm just imagine. Okay, we're all too old now, but like your butt is on the ground now. Imagine trying to get off the ground without also putting your knee on the ground. It's like, I mean, 2 elbows down, and but he was able to do it, and it's he's good.
The parabolic mics didn't pick up him going as he tried to stand up, or the popping of the knees. Yeah, you know how I can tell you're not in your 40s? That's how I can tell you're not in your 40s. So, yeah, he is a good one for sure. I'll let you get. You mentioned Demond Williams, so I'll save him for you. But how about Denzel Boston? It really feels like this offense is. Yeah, you got a bunch of guys. There are 3 names you need to know, and we have now said all 3 of the names: Jonah Coleman, Demond Williams, Denzel Boston. It's going to be, just start your pool right now. Am I going to call him Denzel Burke or David Boston more times next week? I don't know. I'm excited to find out. Denzel Boston, number 12, wide receiver. They said on the broadcast, he had a double sports hernia surgery during the offseason, missed a bunch of time. Doesn't look like it. Looked like he stepped right back in and is playing just fine. They use him as a punt returner. They took a deep shot to him on the opening drive that was incomplete but was close. He had a one-handed touchdown catch in the third quarter. He finished with 5 catches, 92 yards, 5 catches on 7 targets, 18.4 yards per catch. And that's also 92, he's over probably 15 or so yards per attempt in terms of balls thrown in his direction. He is going to be the guy who Ohio State's going to have to keep a real close eye on. And he is, the rest of the wide receivers are just kind of fine, and they'll use, like I said, Jonah Coleman in the pass game. They threw him 1 for 22 yards, but Denzel Boston is going to be the first guy. Stop him is going to be kind of job 1 in the pass game. Stop Jonah Coleman is job 1. Stop Denzel Boston is kind of job 2.
Yeah, I would agree completely with that. And the other 2 receivers, Rashid Williams, 4 for 27. And Desmond Roebuck, 2 for 27. And their game against Cal Davis, they both had bigger numbers in terms of like averages and things like that. But once they're playing, I can't even say a matchup or a light competition, you see what happens. But Denzel Boston, he's big, 6'4", 210, can go up and get it, is physical, and is certainly an NFL prospect. Anybody that follows the draft nicks knows his name. He's been around a while. He's a guy that is reliable and is somebody that just will move the chains for you. And he is long of 39 in this one, and he'll catch the ball wherever, and they'll line him up. They'll do different things with him to get him involved. And he is somebody that quarterback Demond Williams is going to look for. So that's going to be a tough matchup for whoever has him. And there'll be plenty of opportunities for Ohio State, whether it's Davis Nigbenose and Jermaine Matthews, Lorenzo Styles, Devin Sanchez. I'm going to assume all 4 of those guys, assuming Lorenzo Styles is back, will all have their opportunities against him when Ohio State is in Seattle in a couple of weeks. He's legit, but I don't know that he scares you. You respect him, but you're not like, like Xavier Worthy, like the speed of somebody can scare you, or the sheer, the agility or things like that. He's just consistently good and solid. And if you don't respect him, he can't embarrass you. Like he can Ron Johnson you if you're Nate Clements, and you just maybe don't respect him as much as you should. So yeah, he's the third guy. Let's go back to the first guy, Demond Williams, a quarterback who is 5'11", 190. But as Matt Patricia said on Tuesday, he's a guy that gets a top speed on his first step, and he's electric as a runner. He's good enough as a thrower. I cannot wait to watch the battle between Arvell Reese and DeMond Williams as Arvell Reese as the spy, and DeMond Williams having to deal with that. Because we watch Arvell Reese as a spy. He can gain ground. He can get to the quarterback when the quarterback tries to get out there. You're going to have to take a different kind of angle with DeMond Williams because he's a different kind of runner. So that's going to be very interesting. But he's dangerous as all heck. He can do a lot of different things. If he's just in the pocket, though, Tom, Ohio State has to like their chances. If they can just keep him contained and deal with Denzel Burke in that passing game, I don't think you're too scared.
You're the first one to do it. Denzel Boston, not Denzel Burke. See, good. $1 in the jar. All right. So yeah, it's interesting. I wrote down a bunch of notes on him, and a lot of his notes are nice pickup on a scramble on the opening drive, good elusiveness to escape the rush and extend a play for a downfield completion early in the second quarter. Pulls it on a read to get them out from deep in their own end. Another long scramble inside the 5 early in the third. Another long run late in the third. Like he had a bunch. I think he had 3 different runs of like 20 yards or more, which you're not going to be able to outrun. You know, he's outrunning angles on guys, and a lot of that is Colorado State is not Ohio State, and so you're going to have the angles are going to be a little bit different, but the angles are going to be a little bit different for the Ohio State defense as well. That's something that there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment to. You know, he's probably faster and more elusive than Arch Manning, so they really haven't played probably a quarterback quite like this year. But he can hurt you on designed run plays. He can hurt you on everyone's covered downfield, and so I'm going to get out and make something happen with my legs kind of plays. He can hurt you on, get outside the pocket, extend the play, and then throw the ball downfield kind of plays. He's really a sort of a dynamic player with his legs. His stats last year, they had another graphic on the broadcast from his 2 starts last season, which one of them was Oregon, and I don't remember which one the other one was, because we watched the Oregon-Washington game last year as we were preparing for the Rose Bowl. So I remember this game. He had throws of 10-plus yards. He was 14 of 17 for 380 yards and 4 touchdowns. Throws 20 yards or more downfield, 7 of 7, 258 yards, 4 touchdowns. So, he can, I think a lot of those are kind of, he scrambles around, he gets out of the pocket, he extends the play, and then if you have to cover for 4.5 seconds, someone's going to come open on the back end, and he can hit that guy. If you can keep him in the pocket, I think that really changes what they are offensively. I think you can, if he can sort of get out and make things happen, I would guess you're going to see them try and get him out on the edge and make things happen one way or another. He's, I don't know. JJ McCarthy, is that a decent comp where you sort of would see JJ McCarthy in the pocket and it was just kind of like, I don't really see it. But then, he's a better runner than McCarthy is probably, but just in terms of getting him outside, he probably has better weapons than McCarthy did at least in terms of wide receivers. So, something like that, if you're trying to sort of picture who he might be, he's a dangerous player, but Tony, on a bunch of those runs, he's trying to run people over at the end, and it's like, my dude, that is not your game. You are, he was, I'm going to pull up his height and weight right now, 5'11", 190. And Tony, when you're as a quarterback listed at 5'11", 190, congratulations, you're 5'9.5" and 180. And I don't think you are going to be running over people. So I would, if I were you, Tony, this is going to be our 3rd butt cheeks reference of the podcast already. I would get down on my booty if I saw someone coming at me, because there are battles you are not going to win in the open field.
He was incredibly accurate last year and completed 78.1% of his passes. His last 3 games, UCLA, he was 7 of 8. At Oregon, he was 17 of 20. And then the Louisville Bowl game, 26 of 32. So over 80% in all 3 of those games. He was also 12 of 16 at Iowa, 6 of 10 at Penn State, which is actually converts to 80% against most other defenses. So, but this one, the blitz got to him and it was effective. And so there's this thing of, well, just keep him contained. But the Colorado State game shows, well, if you blitz him, he was sacked 3 times and he did not seem to care for that blitz and wasn't effective, finding that hot read. So that's going to be something interesting to watch, where how do you balance? And of course you you do everything. You don't just do one thing, but balancing the desire to keep him contained versus, well, the blitz seems to work, so why not do that? And then just, whatever, just don't blitz Arvell Reese and blitz with the spy and then let him go clean it up, something like that. I'm a defensive coordinator. I can just say, why don't you do this? And boom, it happens.
Before you get to your next one, what were your thoughts on the Washington offensive line from this game? Because they gave up a couple sacks. There were a bunch of times that blitzers were coming free, and it felt like the game plan was, Damon Williams, figure it out. You're just going to have to beat one of those guys. And a lot of times he was able to, but you also had a lot of times where he took a big hit or the pressure got there and you got a sack. They had a couple false starts, and this is a home game. And yes, it's the first game of the season, and you're going to have a bunch of stuff. A bunch of kinks you got to kind of work out a little bit. That you'll work out game 1 to game 2 and then game 3 and then game 4. But, a couple false starts. There's one where the center snapped it before Williams was ready, and that just turned into a turnover. But the offensive line on the whole, I was not overwhelmed with like, this is an incredible line that's going to hold up just fine against Ohio State's defense.
Yeah, my note on the offensive line at the bottom of page 1 here. Not sure about this offensive line, which I think is just pretty much what you just said. That bad snap, the end of the second quarter, where Damon Williams is still giving out the plays. He's adjusting whatever with the player, and boom, here comes the ball. And it's like, did the center look back and see a leg lift or something? I'm not sure why Washington's going on a silent count here at home, but that was a concern. So no real thoughts on the offensive line other than, Jonah Coleman's good, so they must be good enough in some parts, but it wasn't this thing where they just completely overwhelmed the Colorado State defensive line. So if we can move to the other side of the ball then, because here's a defensive line, Washington, that Colorado State had some success against, and mainly in the form of running back Jalen Dupree, who gained 92 yards on 15 carries, a long of 20. Now for the game, Colorado State rushed for 85 yards, sack adjusted and all of that stuff, or not sack adjusted, but overall including the sacks. But Dupree was running the ball. They were running the ball with the running back. And that is both a surprise and a concern, when it's just Colorado State. So when and he had nearly 90 yards rushing in the first half, and then I think they kind of slowed him down there and certainly slowed him down in the second half, but they were having success. And that to me is the first game, but there's a red flag there and maybe a green flag for Ohio State when they're seeing Colorado State able to do that with whatever passing game they have. But that was my first thought is, boy, I think you might be able to run on these guys.
Yeah, and they were able to run on them in the first half. The Colorado State running back had 11 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown in the first half, and then 4 for 7 in the second half. So it wasn't something that they were able to sustain kind of throughout the whole game. But even so, that's more running than you would expect them to be able to do, because the passing attack was not particularly good. There were a lot of throw off your, back shoulder throws, fine. Back foot throws, that's not, there was a lot of not stepping into the throw from Colorado State's quarterback, which is probably a little bit of the pass rush, but also just not a great offense. Even so, they had a couple plays. Jackson Warren was their tight end. He had, I think, back-to-back plays or 2 out of 3 plays with 25 yards, 27 yards, 2 plays where he was just running absolutely free. One of them was kind of like Washington was anticipating sort of a tunnel screen, and he did just a little bit of a block and go, and everyone just kind of went, well, he's out of the picture. Don't need to worry about him anymore. And then all of a sudden he was in the end zone with the ball. It was like, how did that happen? So it was fine. The defense was fine. But when you're looking at that, Colorado State offense and what they are, it felt like you should have been able to control them a lot more. And there were a couple times that Colorado State did just really stupid stuff. They had the second drive of the game, they're moving the ball really well, and they set up a double pass, and then it was a running back, I think, throwing the pass, and the guy was running wide. The quarterback was running wide open, and the second pass missed him by 5-10 yards. It would have been a walk-in touchdown probably. And then they had one later where they set up history's stupidest fake field goal, where They had a different holder out there, which is like, all right, well, I'm guessing they have watched a little bit of film and know who your holder was and who your holder was earlier in the game. So you have a different holder out there, but it wasn't a quarterback, but you're going to have that guy throwing a pass. And even then, the kicker was running open and the guy just ate the sack instead of throwing the ball. And it was just, Colorado State did some dumb stuff. But even so, there were plenty of opportunities for them. I thought the tackling in the secondary was pretty good for Washington. They also, I mean, I'm sure this is going to be a recurring storyline. They have some big corners. Both of their corners are transfers from Arizona, where they played for Jedd Fisch. They're both also 6'4". That's a really interesting storyline going into next week's game because, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, they have just been able to out jump guys for balls, and maybe they can still do it. But when you're going up against a 6'4" guy, being the high man is a little harder.
Yeah, and those two guys, Ephesians Prysock and Sicario Davis, they look like Jeremiah Smith playing corner in terms of like, when you see two guys, a corner opposite a wide receiver, you can usually pick out who is who, at least when there's a big X receiver, like you can pick out which one is, when they're both lined up against Carnell Tate or Jeremiah Smith, you can be like, I don't know which one of those is the wide receiver. Like if you're just looking at them, not knowing the two teams or who's on offense, who's on defense, because they are like that. However, there was one, and I think I just go through my notes. One of them got beaten badly. I think it was Sicario Davis beaten badly off the line. But again, there's no ability to throw deep in this one for the quarterback to throw deep accurately. And that double pass that you mentioned, that wasn't a quarterback, but that should have been an easy 6. And the receiver didn't step into that one at all. But they are very big corners. I don't think that's a plus against Ohio State receivers. I think you want the absolute best athletes with ball skills against Ohio State's cornerbacks, because the number of times they're going to be matched up in terms of, a fade or this or that'll happen here and there down in the red zone perhaps, but then Ohio State can go to other red zone people. But out in the open field, just random plays between the 20s, I don't see this as a good situation for Washington because we'll talk about it until the cows come home. Big corners like that, fantastic. It's great. It's a nice idea. But against really good receivers, doesn't work like you think it should most of the time. And maybe it'll work here. I'm not expecting it to, especially if the Washington defensive line is giving Julian Sayin an opportunity to throw the ball. So they're neat to look at. They're neat to think about in terms of, boy, imagine having a lockdown 6'4" corner. And it's like, well, that's great. But, lockdown 5'11" corner is just as good. It's the lockdown part that is the most important part. I'm not sure that these guys are that.
Well, there's a reason that you don't see a lot of 6'4" corners and that this is like a really notable thing. And maybe they have two of the unique, the unicorns who can do this at 6'4" and also keep up with wide receivers. But you're going to find out because Ryan Walters, what does Ryan Walters play? Ryan Walters plays man coverage. So you are going to find out if they can hang with the Ohio State wide receivers one way or another. The third corner, I just want to shout out Leroy Bryant, who wears number 0. The only time I noticed him was he was flagged for defensive pass interference, and I looked him up to see how tall he was, 6'0". However, Tony, his major is comparative history of ideas, which just feels like going to college. That feels like you're majoring in going to college, the comparative history of ideas. So there you go on that one. Alex McLaughlin, safety, number 12. His story, they talked about it on the broadcast. He's a transfer from Northern Arizona. Jedd Fisch offered him a scholarship, or offered him a walk-on spot at Arizona. He ended up taking a scholarship role at Northern Arizona, and then had a really good career there, and then moved with Jedd Fisch to Washington. He hit a nice TFL on a reverse in the third quarter. He is real physical in pass coverage and did not get called for a couple times that, the announcers are kind of going, and these are Big Ten Network announcers, and it's Lincoln Kennedy, who's a Washington guy. And they're kind of going like, oh boy, no flag there, huh? And so that's one of those things where, if you're getting real physical with Colorado State receivers, that may be something that Ohio State can exploit potentially. depending on who he gets matched up with in that game.
Yeah, and Alex McLaughlin, you'll see him a lot as the Dylan Thieneman lined up at times 20 yards off the line of scrimmage. Like there'll be times you won't see him on the screen. There are other times where they'll play split safeties and you'll see him there, but they'll do some different things in Ryan Walters' defense. How about this when Colorado State 2-minute drill right down the field? That was bizarre. 71 yards and 90 seconds at the end of the second quarter, and just marched it right down the field and tied the game up at like 14 at that point. And again, throwing it, running it, doing whatever they need, really good usage of the time and all of that. It's just another, like, again, it's the first game of the season, and this is game one for Washington. And, so things aren't firing on all cylinders just yet, but I was surprised. And, give Colorado State some credit. They went down there, they took advantage, and they just went down and scored. And this game seemed never too big for them until finally things got out of control in like the fourth quarter.
Well, and that drive, this is not a Colorado State rewatch show, but I do want to shout out that drive and the play calling at the end of that last drive. It was gutsy play calling because they would use their last timeout. They had the ball on maybe the 10, 15-yard line, something like that. There's 17 seconds left, and it was whatever, at least 8, 10 yards to go. They ran the ball. And I was not expecting that. The Washington defense was not expecting it either because, if you get tackled and you don't get reset, you lose your shot at a field goal there. And they ended up scoring a touchdown on that one. So that was a gutsy call. I think it was right before setting that drive up. Washington gave up a kickoff return that went across the 50. So that's just something to sort of keep an eye on. That, again, it's one kick return. It's week one, but just kind of keep an eye on it. We'll watch another game after that gets a little closer to the Ohio State game. They play the Apple Cup this weekend, 7:30, and they have to go to Pullman, where nothing ever goes wrong. So it'll, I'm sure, be fine. The only other name that I had on here, well, Adam Muhammad, the backup running back, also a kick returner. You saw him a little bit. That's another name to know. The one of the safeties, Mikel Esteen, safety number 24. He's 6'1". They call him tiny. No, they probably don't. He had an interception where the ball was a little behind the wide receiver. He made a great break on the ball and just straight up took it right out of the wide receiver's hands for an interception. So, it was a nice, really, really nice play on the ball there for him.
A couple of my other notes, and you mentioned this a little bit here, but I had the tight ends are eating against Washington. The Colorado State tight ends were doing well. So does Ohio State have tight ends? Who's to say? I know it's not a Colorado State rewatch. Colorado State has a running back named Lloyd Avant. So I'm like, please, I hope. And I went to look, is this Jason Avant's kid that he named after his former Michigan head coach? No, it's not. And I don't know how many former Michigan players would have named their son after Lloyd anyway, but I wanted to see. Anything else that I've got here? On those blitzes, like they were bringing 6 and 7 guys against DeMond Williams. So there had to be some people running free, but they overwhelmed him. And I thought that was certainly effective. And then watch out for the squib kick, because Washington pulled a squib kick. We know what happened last year at Oregon with that whole scandal with kicking it into CJ Hicks. Not a scandal, but I mean, it's cheating. Come on. But just beware of something like that. I think it's good that they saw this and then reminded themselves, oh yeah, when you go out west, stupid stuff happens. And I think other than that terrible fake field goal call for Colorado State, but again, not a Colorado State rewatch. That's tomorrow's show. That's about all I've got.
The only other two notes that I have is coming into this game, I don't want to spoil the surprise. They beat UC Davis as well. They are entering this game with a 22-game home winning streak. So it has been a minute since Washington has lost at home. And that is because Husky Stadium gets loud. And they have the same, kind of a similar thing to the setup at Autzen Stadium, where they have those kind of overhangs. There are metal roofs there, and those metal roofs serve two purposes. One, it rains all the time in Husky Stadium, and then you don't get wet. Two, the noise goes up, hits that, and then bounces right back down to the field. It is a very, very loud stadium, even though it's only about 70,000 people. So that's one note. The other one is people are, I'm sure, wondering, Kojo Antwi, former Ohio State wide receiver. Did he play for Colorado State? No, he ruptured his Achilles back in January, like right as he was transferring. Like he had decided where he was going, ruptured it right before the national championship game, and he is still coming back from that. So that's why you have not heard us talk about Kojo Antwi in this show.
So I'm looking at that home winning streak. The last time they lost to a ranked opponent at home was a 26-16 loss to Oregon, number 7 Oregon in 2021. The ranked teams they've beaten at home since then, number 11 Michigan State in 2022, number 24 Oregon State in 2022. Then you go to 2023, and it's number 8 Oregon. We know they own Oregon. Everybody knows this. Number 8 Oregon. They beat number 13 Utah 35-28. And then last year, the mighty number 10 Michigan Wolverines fell 27-17 there at Washington. So I don't know if there's been a murderer's row of opponents, but that is a good stretch of ranked opponents that they have defeated. None of them inside the top 10 other than that number 10, a couple of them, I guess. But Oregon and Michigan, I don't know if that counts. You got the rivalry, and then Michigan as a number 10 team last year at the middle of the season. I'm a little suspicious of that.
If you're going to talk about rivalry games and the difficulty of beating Michigan, this is probably not the show to do that on. But we'll have that context, and we'll start a different show. Let's talk about Wake Forest football, and then we can talk about beating Michigan, and no one will have sassy comments for us on YouTube.
That'll be after the Colorado State show. Then we'll do our Wake Forest watch along and all of that other good stuff. So I think that'll do it. I'm looking forward to this game because there are things on offense that Washington can do that will make life difficult for Ohio State, and there are things on defense that Washington can do as long as the crowd helps and maybe some weather that will make life difficult on the Buckeyes. And right now, Tom, might be some rain. Now it's a little early, but you could probably say that any day in Seattle, right?
Yeah, I looked at the long-range forecast, and we're there Friday and Saturday, and it was a high of 62 and rain showers on Friday and a high of 62 and rain showers on Saturday. And I thought, good, we're getting the full Seattle experience, the entire range of weather outcomes in Seattle.
So there you go. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit this thumbs up. And subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. I don't know why you wouldn't. You get notified if you hit the bell as well. Subscribe to the channel. It helps us. It helps you most of all. And really, that's what this is all about. And of course, you can continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Subscribe there, and that would help us as well. And we would talk to you there, the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus, where we talk about all sorts of things behind the scenes, on the paywall, beyond the paywall there. So check us out there, and we would greatly appreciate seeing you there. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.